So what we're going to do is wire this up. And again, we're going to do the same method. We're going to plug our wires in to each side of our terminal, just like this. And then we're going to tighten our screws down. And because I'm using two different colored wires, we'll know to color code our start and our end of each of our coil wires. And that will transfer down into our screw blocks, which are down here, which, as you can see, this side will be red, which follows the red wire up to this side of our terminal block, and this side will be white, which follows up to our white side of our terminal block. And so we will color code our connections for our coil when we get to that point as well. So what I'm doing here is I'm just plugging it in to our coil block, or our screw blocks here. And sometimes they're a little hard to get where you want them to be exactly. And then you'll go ahead and tighten down the screws once again. Okay. Now, you can pull on the wires, you can do all kinds of things with it to try and make sure that they're set and things like that. But the best way to make sure that you have all of your contacts together is to use your ohm meter. Now, this is the particular one that I'm using right now. And how we're going to do that is we're going to set this over to our ohm setting. And you'll see that on the readout it says 0.L. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to change the selection here so that it's going to tell me with a sound that it's ohming out correctly. Now, you should hear a sound if you're making contact through that wire. And how we know that that's working is, I'm going to slide this over just a little so that you can see that. If we take our two wires that come off of our meter, which is our red and our black, and we touch those together, you can hear the sound coming off of our meter. Okay? Now, if we take our contact from the one pole on our coil here, and we contact the other side up on our coil block, then it will show that we have continuity. If we take this same terminal and we go into our terminal here, you'll see it has continuity. You will also check this one and this one. That makes sure that we have a complete circuit from our coil side of our screw lug all the way through that wire, all the way to our export. And then we'll check our white wire, and we'll do that the same way. Okay, and we'll check here. Good. We'll check here. Good. And we'll check here. Good. So we know that we're making good continuity through this whole section. So we know that this circuit block is going to be working correctly. And from this point, we would go ahead and install our other side of our coil here into our other coil block. And then we're going to take this whole setup and we're going to attach it to our coil testing rig. And that I'm going to show you next. Okay, here you can see the demo table and the demo of the coil testing machine. You can see our platform that we're using here, and our rotor. Our magnets have already been placed in, and you can see one of our test blocks that's already wired up and ready to go with our bolts in place in the back that I described to you earlier, with our coil that's threaded in. And then, as you can see, when we rotate this, the coil doesn't move even without our top block. Now, what I wanted to show you was the wiring for that as well, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But what I wanted to show you is the test block that we had just finished, how that works. You'll notice these two side rails that are here as well. These two side rails are in addition to the original unit that I was using because of the forces that are applied by the rotating of the rotor and the turn ratio in reference to the amount of torque that is being put on our coils to pull away, or the shear force in between the magnets and our coils. It was necessary to put these two on here to keep it from pivoting or moving in any way. Wanted to make sure that we had as good a readings as possible. So how that works is this comes over and slips in. It's a very tight, snug fit. And then this will come over and go up next to our coil, and we can gauge this to within about a 1/16 of an inch, but I hold it back at about an 1/8 of an inch away from our rotor. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and screw these units down. And I've already pre-drilled for our holes, so we know exactly where these are going to go. So I've pre-drilled for those. We're going to go ahead and get these mounted, and then I will be back to show you the next step. Okay, and here you can see the finished blocks. So as they're all screwed down, we have our larger wire coming off our coil and our smaller wire coming off the coil. I have this set here that's going to be for our combined effort between our two coils coming into one hub, and I'll show you more about that as we go. We have our rotor in place with our magnets in place, and then I can show you here how the wires are connected for our coil. So we have the start wire, we have our end wire, we have our start wire, and we have our end wire. And those run into the screw blocks, down through our cables, into our other screw lug setup, and then this is the exact duplicate of what I showed you how to build, just on the other side so that everything looks symmetrical. So our next thing that we're going to do is we're going to run our power out of this to our load, and we're going to do some testing. So as you can see here, our coil is threaded into our block in the back. You can see that we've got our proper gap here for our rotor and our coil. And then how the block works, as I can show you here, is the block slides down over our pins, down, and then our clamp will come around and clip directly onto our coil, just like this. And then this little nub at the top, or the handle, is what is going to rotate around and down, and as that goes down, it grips on the top here and causes this block to increase its pressure on our coil. And then as everything moves, then you can see that our coil is definitely not going to go anywhere. We've got confirmed locks. We have our bolts here that put our force directly onto the table through the use of our friction tape so that our block isn't going to move in any direction. We have our rails so that our block can't move left and right or pivot. And then we have our screw lugs where we can make all of our contacts without moving or adjusting anything on our coil. We can just change our contact pattern. So as you can see, the full unit is now complete. The only thing we have left to do is to mount our other coil in this side and go ahead and screw this side down. And that's pretty much it. So we're almost up to testing some coils. And I'll show you how to do all the wiring and all the different layouts coming over as we go through it, step by step, so you can see exactly how these coils are tested, routed, and showing power outputs as well.